Second Maccabees and the doctrine of Purgatory. One of the texts often cited in supposed defense of the Roman Catholic doctrine of purgatory is Second Maccabees 12. Now, there is, of course, debate between whether Second Maccabees should even be included in the canonical scriptures. And there's significant evidence against that. The fact that it was not ever accepted by the Jews. There's good reason to believe it wasn't accepted by Jesus and the apostles. It is not accepted as authoritative by Josephus. It is rejected by several early church fathers like Athanasius. It's not accepted by Jerome. And while it is accepted by some church councils and some church leadership like Augustine, it is rejected by many others, and on good reason. That being said, suppose even if it were accepted, just ignore that issue for a moment. It's often cited as one of the proof texts for the Roman Catholic doctrine of purgatory, which is the doctrine that through a treasury of merit, which is the extra goodness and righteousness of Jesus and the saints, those who die in the grace of God, still with some leftover sins and unrighteousness, need a time of temporal cleansing from their sins and can indulgences purchased for them or done for them that take time off of purgatory. Now, purgatory only applies to a certain category of sins, which are called venial sins. They do not apply to mortal sins. Mortal sins in Catholic theology destroy the grace of justification and can only rightly be paid for through God's wrath in hell. Venial sins can be forgiven, but worked off through temporal suffering or punishment or works, and most people do not work those off in their lifetime, according to Catholic theology. So therefore, those who die in God's grace and God's favor must endure a time in purgatory to be purged of those sins before they enter the state of eternal blessedness in heaven. Okay? The Bible does not teach this. However, Catholics, assuming the authoritative canonical status of Second Maccabees, number one, and assuming that it teaches the doctrine of purgatory, number two, draw this as a proof text. But let's see what it says. It says, then Judas, it's talking about Judas Maccabeus, then Judas assembled his army and went down to the city of Adullam. As the seventh day was coming on, they purified themselves according to the custom, and they kept the Sabbath there. On the next day, as by that time it had become necessary, Judas and his men went up to take the bodies of the fallen and bring them back to lie with their kinsmen in the sepulchres of their fathers. So what's going on here is, as you can see here, there's a battle that has taken place. Judas and the others purify themselves and keep the Sabbath, but then they go to collect the bodies of their kinsmen that have died in battle. These are Jews who have fought the battle and have been killed. And so they collect them with the intent to bring them back to the graves of their fathers. However, when they find them and examine the bodies and are collecting these men, they find something kind of disturbing. Verse 40 says, then under the tunic of every one of the dead, they found sacred tokens of the idols of Gemnia, which the law forbids the Jews to wear. And it became clear to all that this was why these men had fallen. So, according to verse 40, these men had committed the sin of willful idolatry, that they had taken idols of the god Gemnia and tokens of those idols and hidden them under their tunics. And their assessment, the Jews who were living and collecting these bodies, their assessment is that this sin is why they had died in battle. And so, text continues, so it says, so they all blessed the ways of the Lord, the righteous judge who reveals the things that are hidden. And they turned to prayer, beseeching that the sin which had been committed might be wholly blotted out. And the noble Judas exhorted the people to keep themselves free from sin, for they had seen with their own eyes what had happened because of the sin of those who had fallen, which is the sin of idolatry. He also took up a collection, man by man, to the amount of 2,000 drachmas of silver, and sent it to Jerusalem to provide for a sin offering. In doing this, he acted very well and honorably, taking account of the resurrection. So Judas collects for among people some silver, sends it to Jerusalem to have a sin offering made on behalf of these dead men who had committed idolatry. And the text identifies this as a righteous act because Judas is thinking ahead to the future resurrection. Okay, so it still doesn't mention purgatory directly, but it does mention an offering being made on behalf of the dead. Verse 44 and 45 get more explicit. It says, for if he were not expecting that those who had fallen would rise again, resurrection, it would have been superfluous and foolish to pray for the dead. But if he was looking to the splendid reward that is laid up for those who fall asleep in godliness, it was a holy and pious thought. Therefore, he made atonement for the dead, that they might be delivered from their sin. Now, theologically, I believe there are some problems with that. But even suspending judgment on that point for a moment, don't necessarily see that purgatory is mentioned. It mentions offering made for those who die in godliness for the future resurrection. That's still theologically problematic as well. However, it does mention prayers for the dead, that it would be otherwise foolish to pray for the dead, but he was looking for the splendid reward that is laid up for those who fall asleep in godliness. It was a holy and pious thought. Therefore, he made atonement for the dead, collecting money, sending it for a sacrifice for the dead, which is not exactly the Roman Catholic practice of indulgences, of doing something or paying for an indulgence to receive favor out of the treasury of merit to shorten the time on purgatory, that they might be delivered, as it finishes, from their sin. Now, it does here talk about prayers for the dead. It does here talk about money for sacrifices and all those things. Now, let's assume, as I don't believe this even teaches, let's assume that this is talking about purgatory and the whole treasury of merit Roman Catholic system that develops over time, almost 1,000 years after this text. So it's a little bit anachronistic, first of all, to put purgatory back onto this. However, let's assume that we can do that. Purgatory in Roman Catholic theology is only for those who die in the grace of God, who have not committed mortal sin. However, idolatry, willful and known idolatry, not of pagans, but of Jews who know God and know the law would have been mortal sin. So the event here of finding Jews who died and under their tunics have idols is a mortal sin. But according to Roman Catholic theology, purgatory is not for mortal sin. Therefore, the prayers for the dead and the atonement happening here cannot be purgatory, even according to Roman Catholic theology. So either First Maccabees is right and Roman Catholic theology is incorrect. Roman Catholic theology is right and Maccabees is incorrect, or they may both be incorrect. But the idea that purgatory is taught out of this text in 2 Maccabees 12:38 through 45 is simply untrue.